Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you are all staying safe. I hope you are all well. And welcome to this Inner4 digital marketing webinar, which we are going to be doing today. I hope you can all hear me. I do have my assistant on hand to be able to tell me that you can all hear me. I hope you can all see me. So today's webinar, we're going to be discussing digital marketing in 2020. It is an exciting time, I suppose is the best way of put it, even though it is within unprecedented times. I suppose the best way of sort of talking about it is even though we're in these very difficult times at the moment, what we do know is things are going to be changing in a way which it probably needs to in some ways. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities coming around for all businesses, big and small, and there's going to be some changes in the digital landscape because of the sheer mass and number of people that are now sort of turning their head that perhaps otherwise didn't turn their head towards digital platforms. So that's all very, very exciting. And the whole point of us conducting this webinar is so that you can get a better understanding of what the landscape is probably going to look like, how it's going to differ to how it is today or how it was before, and also just changing hopefully some of your mindsets into how we should be looking towards these greater opportunities or these different opportunities that perhaps weren't there before. Now, that is not to say that some of it isn't going to be a very similar. I just realised that no one can see me, so I'm just going to make sure. Let me just come out of that and let me do this. There we go. Hello. So the landscape is going to be very, very different. During the course of this webinar, if you do have any questions, queries, anything like that, then don't be afraid to just go onto the YouTube chat and post your question there. Mia, who is also watching this, will be able to forward those questions on to me, and hopefully I will be able to answer them for you. So yeah, if you do have any questions, do not hesitate. No matter how big or small, if you're embarrassed about them, whatever, do not hesitate to ask them. And if it helps anybody, even in a small or tiny way, then that's really cool and that's really good. This webinar is for Wigan businesses. Hopefully, because we are a local Wigan digital agency, and we want to help our community as much as we possibly can. So if you are a Wigan business, I hope you are doing well. I hope you are finding a way through these difficult times, and maybe some of the information that you're going to glean from this webinar today, you'll be able to take with you, and it will be able to help you in some big or small way. So let's crack on with it. I am going to change my screen and we will go onto it. So here we go. Let me open this up and let me start presenting. Okay, cool. I hope you can all see me and I hope you can see my slides as well. So the landscape of digital marketing in 2020 and how to get ahead. Let's talk first about what has changed or what is potentially changing as well, because as we go through this process, then things are going to be very, very different. And the fact of the matter is that at the moment, as things stand, because we are within these very uncertain times, we don't really know. We don't really know what's going to happen, and we don't know how the landscape is going to change massively. What we do know is we can make assumptions and we can make predictions, and I have a few already. First of all, it is going to be one giant leap for digital kind. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, we know now that because of the circumstances which we are in, a lot of people are now either working from home, they're working remotely, they're talking to each other on digital platforms because they can't do it in the same way that they could before. In terms of being face-to-face or over the phone. Well, they can still do it over the phone, but face-to-face certainly, being in an office, they can't do that. So they're now being shoved into, shall I put it in that way, into using digital platforms. And that's not just talking about video conferencing or webinars such as this one. We're talking about using social media more because perhaps traditional methods aren't working for them. Outside media is pretty much defunct at this moment in time because people aren't outside as much as they were. So they're thinking more about how to utilize social media. We're all thinking about the different ways which we can not just communicate with the customers and the clients that we might have now, but also the customers and clients in which we hopefully will gain, and the prospective customers and clients that we hope to get as well. So everybody, business owners, entrepreneurs, families, grandparents, mothers and daughters and fathers and sons, everybody is making a leap onto digital platforms. And I think that is going to have seismic ripples throughout not just how we live our day-to-day lives, but also in the business world as well, because we're all a little bit more comfortable now, and perhaps the generation which wasn't comfortable before is a little bit more comfortable now in using digital platforms, which is a good thing. It means that audience is now bigger. And because that audience is bigger, there's one thing that's come out from it so far, and that is we have seen a huge upturn in the amount of digital content. So content has become God. Now, if you've heard the old phrase batted about in the past where content was king, what we mean by that is on the web and on the internet, content makes everything go round. So we're talking about blog posts and blog articles and Instagram pictures and Snapchat and Facebook posts and all that kind of thing. Content is what we consume on a day-to-day basis. And because now we have now got a lot more people on digital platforms on a day-to-day basis and more consistently throughout the day, there's more content which is being consumed, and therefore much more demand of content to be consumed. So we need to be creating more content. The other thing to remember about this is, which we're going to discuss and talk about as we get further through this webinar, is we need to remember about that quality of content, because it's not going to be the case anymore that just regurgitating and creating content for the sake of creating content is going to be good enough. There is going to be an aspect of, well, if we're not creating the quality of content which our audience yearns for, and almost expects perhaps, then it's not going to really have the impact that you want. So you might put a lot of effort into creating content, but if the quality is not there, then the audience is not going to receive that content. And it's really important here to differentiate this idea that your audience is what you need to be thinking about. I think with digital marketing, certainly sometimes we can get a little bit bogged down in this idea of we need to make the platform happy, whether that be LinkedIn, whether that be Facebook, whether that be Google. We need to make the platform happy. What do we do to make the platform show our content more? Well, in all instances, the platform wants you to create content which is going to attract and engage an audience. And because of that, if you are engaging and attracting your audience, you're also going to sort of skip a couple of steps of that conversion funnel, aren't you? Because you are going to attract the platform and you're going to attract the customer as well, and they're going to want to engage with you. Which leads us nicely onto this. Number one, pulling in a loud nightclub. Now, if you're anything like me, you will not know anything about pulling in a loud nightclub because you never pull in a nightclub ever in your life. But the point is that there was a certain type of person that had the ability to be able to pull in a loud nightclub. Being above the noise, they somehow had an aura around them, and they had a confidence around them. They were able to dance or move in a certain way which just attracted members of the opposite sex towards them. And that's no different to marketing in general, okay? At the moment, there is a lot of, and there has been for a while, but it's more so now that this pandemic is upon us, there's a lot of noise. And we as digital consumers are becoming a lot more picky about what noise we decide to listen to and hear. So what we need to be doing is making sure that the content that we're producing is actually being above that noise. So if you imagine that this image here is the digital landscape, the digital world, there's a lot of people there, and there is a lot of noise. And how are you going to be seen? How are you going to be heard in that crowd of people? There's one option which a lot of businesses take, and we see this with a lot of businesses that tend to heed advice which is either out of date, or they just think it's the best way to follow, I suppose. It's the "you can't get away from me" approach, okay? This thing where if I just keep creating content and making content and putting it out there, then eventually, surely, someone is going to take notice of me. And if you just keep doing that, then it'll happen for you. The fact is, it won't. That is why, if you take this example, okay, so this is an example where I just sort of kind of came across this guy on Twitter when I was going through my feeds, and I just saw this guy, and what he'd done is he just automatically, through some kind of automated tool or whatever, was just creating tweet after tweet and putting hashtags in one after the other, and you notice they're all within the same time frame. He just posted them out all at once, thinking, well, if I create enough noise, then I'll be able to get people's attention. What you will notice, however, is absolutely none of them, if you look at the bottom of each one of those tweets, the ones that you can see, none of them have any engagement whatsoever. So if you are just tweeting for the sake of tweeting, saying, hey, look at this, we do this, certainly from a business point of view, we do this, we do that, aren't we amazing, aren't we great, then you're not really making the noise that's going to attract people. Yes, you're making noise on a platform, and you can't just expect that platform to attract people towards you. You need to put the effort into the content and think about your strategy and think about your content in a way where you are attracting people towards you. So just making noise isn't really going to be effective. This is why this is the way that I like to dance in a loud nightclub, okay? If you dance like this, I can assure you, you will gain some attention. But the fact is, you are being different, okay? If you are some way unique, if you are some way different than everybody else that's making noise, then you'll be able to attract people's attention. And then it's your responsibility to be able to convert that into some kind of sale or customers or clients or whatever it is. Okay. One of the biggest examples of this, and one of the classic examples, was from a couple of years ago when Greggs created this piece of content. This is probably the most famous sausage roll that ever existed, and that is saying something. I never thought I'd be able to say that statement, but there it is, the most famous sausage roll. And the reason they did that was because they did such a good job of marketing it in such a way and creating a content around something so mundane like a vegan sausage roll, that it just completely took off, and it took the world by storm, and everybody was talking about the new Greggs vegan sausage roll. And you can see the engagement at the bottom there, how effective that was. And the reason was that they reflected a sausage roll in the same way that Apple or Google at the moment would market their top of the range technological breakthrough mobile phones and smartphones. And the way they did that was so impressive that it got people talking, it got people thinking about it. So the takeaway I want to sort of give you in that is that digital channels are really, really noisy places. And if you are just another one of these people that is making a certain amount of noise, then I'm sorry, you're probably not going to be effective. If you're making a noise which is unique or different, that's going to attract an audience, then you are going to be effective. So think about your business and do a little bit of sort of reverse engineering with it. What is it about your business that you can talk about in a different way, that you can talk about? And one of the best tactics in order to do this is really looking at your competitors and looking at how they talk about their products or their services, and how you can perhaps do things differently. And another really good thing is just looking at decent pieces of content. So follow the big brands, follow the big names, and look at the way that they're marketing and talking about it. And I'm not saying steal their ideas, but borrow them and incorporate them and riff upon them in order to create your own content and see what works. And remember, the data is key. So if you are posting a piece of content which you've probably invested a certain amount of time into, and you're posting a series of different things, whether it be videos or whether it be images or whether it be audio content, whatever, look at what works and look at what doesn't work and try and fathom out what are the unique aspects of those pieces of content, the different pieces of content that are resonating with people. What is the reason why they are sharing it? What are the reasons that they are liking it? Those kind of things. So try and use the data to be able to restrict the amount of time that you're putting into creating content, because ultimately if you put the effort in order to create all these different types of content, eventually you'll be able to gather from your data, okay, well, this worked and this worked and this worked, so we're going to create different variations of this, or we're going to do this, which is something very, very similar, which is also going to resonate. But also don't forget, you can't rely on that strategy for a long period of time. For a series of 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, again, the data will be able to tell you this, but you have to remember to change it up and try different things and new things interspersed with the things that you think work and what you know works well. So quality equals value, and that's very, very different from quantity equaling value, which some people fall into the trap of doing. Just because you are creating content and just because you are writing blog posts, or because you are creating posts on social media or Instagram, whatever it is, it's not about the quantity in which you do it, it's about the quality in which you do it. Okay, number 2. In 2020, we need to, and for a long, long time now, we need to remember that Google is now smarter than it used to be. The reason I say this is because there seems to be this antiquated mindset. When I talk to a lot of clients, I talk to a lot of businesses, whether it's prospective customers or whatever, and they have an antiquated mindset that Google is, yes, it's an algorithm, it's a robot, and you can trick Google into making you rank number 1. You can trick Google into making it think that you are this or you are that or whatever it is. The fact of the matter is now, Google is now an artificial intelligence within itself. And it is very, very smart. And the reason it's smart is because artificial intelligence is fed by data, and there's nothing that Google has in abundance more than data. So it is very, very smart looking at that data and being able to figure out, okay, well, this is this, and this is that, and this is that. The key part of that is remembering that at the end of the day, Google wants to provide the best experience to its users. If you don't remember that when you're creating content for your website, or you're building your website, or creating a sitemap for a new website perhaps, then you're going to ultimately fail. The best way, and I'm going to cite this to a good friend of mine, Rick Rodriguez, who is a true expert in SEO, and he will always say that, Google fell out of becoming a search engine quite a while ago, a couple of years ago, and it's now an engine which demands answers. Okay, people want answers from Google, whether that be answers of a question which we ask Google every single day. Who was in this film? What other films has this person been in? Or whether that be, how do I sort this DIY problem in my house? How do I do this in my garden? Or whether it be, what businesses are around me that do this service? What businesses are out there that sell this product? It is an answers engine rather than just a search engine. And if you think about it in that way, then that means when it comes to creating content for your site or building out your new site, then you can remember that you need to be answering the questions which your prospective customers and your prospective clients have. If you don't do that, then ultimately you're going to fail. A lot of businesses, I work with a lot of websites made by businesses, and a lot of the problems that they fall into is they think their website is an opportunity for them to talk about themselves in the same way that a business card would be. And although that is true to a certain degree, you should be talking about yourselves and how you perhaps distance yourselves from your competitors. Ultimately, what you need to be saying is, and talking about, is how you as a business and as a service provide the best service for your customers and clients, and how you do that. So we need to, and if you do that, Google will reward you for it. The SEO of yesterday is not the SEO of today. I keep saying this. I put this slide in a lot of these talks that I do because I'm not saying the messages never get. There's a lot of people that need to get the message, but ultimately, it's a really key message to take on board. That just because you have learnt SEO from 10, 5, 2, 1 years ago does not mean that that SEO technique, tactic, tip that you've picked up is relevant for today. And we'll come to that in a second. So, if you've learned SEO in the past, I always stick with the fundamental thinking that I try and forget it all and relearn it again from the latest data or the latest studies. Let's take an example checklist from 2008 for Google. Okay, this is an SEO checklist of 2008. You do on your website, you do your title tags and you do your heading tags and you write some content. Maybe you sprinkle in some keywords in there. You create a sitemap and you get some backlinks. That's links from other websites to your website. And that used to be the checklist for SEO in 2008. Done, tick all those boxes, boxed off, done. You probably start to rank quite well. And even that is, we're talking 10 years after the invention of Google. So this is 10 years of evolution of Google after its initial inception. So that was the checklist. Since that point, since 2008, which is just a date I picked out of the air, by the way, there have been 111 plus updates to Google's algorithm. Now, the issue with that metric that I put on there is actually when I say an update, they're the ones that we know about. Okay. I'll go back a step because we actually don't know all of Google's updates. And the fact of the matter is that now Google don't really do updates to their algorithm in terms of, there is a day where Google pushes an update to its algorithm. Nowadays, the algorithm changes all the time. Google changes all the time. And it might not be very as broad brushed as it used to be, where we used to have Google updates such as Panda and Penguin and Pigeon and things like that. Now, the Google algorithm is changing on a day-to-day basis. Yes, sometimes it's a little bit more volatile, sometimes it's a little bit less volatile, but ultimately it's updating all the time. Nowadays, what we tend to see is we see updates in particular verticals. So, for example, last year we saw a big update in the healthcare space. So all websites that were dedicated to healthcare, medical questions and answers and all that kind of stuff, they had a massive change in their ranking. So we're starting to see that changes are starting to happen in verticals. They also happen regionally, so certain people will see updates in their SERPs in certain areas rather than others. So we're seeing this more A/B split test kind of things, and we're also seeing things like Google changing their SERP and off and on and going back on the changes that they've made. In 2018, so I'm going back 2 years. In 2018, we know about mobile and speed. Okay, these were the big changes. These were the big things that Google's really pushing down our throat. We need to make our websites mobile friendly, and we need to make them fast and quick. Okay. The common trend in 2018 was it was all about the users. This is when we started to see this seismic shift between Google going, okay, we just want to provide the best results for our users. So if your website is not mobile friendly, which now more than 50% of users in terms of where they search on Google, they use a mobile device, not a laptop or a desktop or anything like that. Google was basically saying, if you don't have a mobile optimized site, if your website is not friendly for mobile devices, then you are going to probably see that reflected in your rankings and in your organic traffic. The other thing was speed. Now, it's a little bit of a hot potato because if you actually look at the data, it's a little bit less drastic now that we've had 2 years to sort of think about it and look at it and how much it's changed. We can see now that really what Google was telling us was, your site needs to be as fast as possible. If it's not faster than this person, then it's going to be you're going to be reflected in your search traffic. Actually, what Google was doing was it was really trying to push webmasters into saying, okay, if you need to make your website so that it doesn't take forever to load on a mobile device. And if it falls, what we're actually seeing in the data is if it falls below a certain, in the bottom 10% of websites in terms of site speed, then we're actually seeing that effect. So, but as a good rule of thumb, we should always be making sure that we're providing the best experience on a mobile and that it's fast, because the data doesn't lie when we know that if your website doesn't load within 3 seconds on a mobile device, then most users are going to get bored. We're all living a very quick life. They're going to get bored and they're going to go away and they're going to go somewhere else. They're going to click back to the search results page and click another option. So why would, for the sake of speed, make it fast, make it quick. Don't lose that traffic just because your website is not fast enough. In 2019, we took it a step further. Well, Google took it a step further. We know about BERT, okay? Now, you may not have heard of BERT, so let me give you some context. BERT was the last real known major core algorithm update that we named. It was so big we named it, shall we call it that way? BERT is simply a Google's natural language processor. What we mean by that is we know that Google sort of scans our websites and looks for key phrases on our website, and if it thinks that page is on a particular topic, then when someone searches for that topic, it will appear. Well, now Google knows it a little bit better, because that was being swayed and that was being sort of tricked by just putting in a load of words that were related to particular phrases. So Google generated and created its natural language processor, where it can now understand, like how I am talking now. If Google was listening to this, it would be able to understand what I am talking about. It's able to put semantic links between words and go, okay, well, if Google had to crawl this webinar, it knows it's about digital marketing in 2020. So it'll be able to reflect that back in the results, if that's so how it works. Equally, if you've got a piece of content, you're not forced, therefore, into just throwing and crowbarring keywords into it to make it rank well. You can talk naturally and write naturally in the way that you would with your expertise and your knowledge, which might include some very expert language, a language with only experts, but they're your audience, and only experts would understand. And Google will be able to naturally understand that. And it'll be reflected for you. Sorry, I said Google and my phone instantly lit up because it thought I was talking to it. So 2019 into 2020, we've had a series of core updates. We've had absolutely loads of core updates. In fact, just preceding this pandemic, the 30 days in terms of how volatile the SERPs were, it was immense. We had like 30 straight days of a very volatile Google algorithm, which is starting to it's swaying into saying, we know that these are consistent algorithm updates which are keeping us on our toes. We don't know what they were, to be quite honest. We have no idea, and there's no way that we can keep up with that data to be able to ascertain what it is. But that's why it's so important to have that idea in our head, where we're saying, at the end of the day, Google wants to provide the best results for its users. So are you answering the users' questions? Are you answering your customers' questions, your clients' questions? And if you're not doing that in your content, whether that be on your website in the form of a blog post, and then separating that content out into the form of social media posts as well, which people can engage with and share across their network, which might be relevant to your business as well. So we need to just keep that in mind, because we can no longer rely on the reactive nature that we perhaps were before, on just looking at, what did Google do to their algorithm last, and we'll just make sure that we fix it or botch it or hack it so that it makes it work. That's no longer the case. Those days, in my personal belief, are gone. So we need to be making sure that what we're doing with our website is providing the best possible content for the audience that we have established. And like I say, we don't even know what all of those algorithm updates were. We certainly don't know what most of the algorithm updates were in the past 6 months or so, because they were just so numerous and so consistent. The mobile first index, which was 2018, was probably the biggest change in SEO in years. We kind of had a lull in what happened with SEO, and there was almost like a status quo that happened until suddenly the mobile first index arrived. To give you a bit of context on what that means, which you may or may not have heard of, the mobile first index was when Google decided, okay, we now know that 50 plus more percent of our users are searching on mobile devices rather than desktop devices because the smartphone has become so popular. And so it made the fundamental decision that rather than crawling websites desktop presence, okay, it's desktop presence, it will crawl its mobile presence as well. Now, that has different ramifications for different people because there was a spread of people only having certain content on mobile devices, usually quite restrictive content on mobile devices over their desktop devices. So there was a sort of disconnect between the two. In most cases, 90% of them, it didn't really affect anyone because people's desktop websites were their mobile websites. So they were just fashioned and laid out in a way which was readable for them. So the mobile first index was a seismic change for us to be able to say, okay, well, we know that mobile is important. We know that most users use their mobile phones to consume our content and our website content. So we need to be making sure that that is the thing that we focus on. Certainly at NF4, we took the seismic shift to make sure that we were focusing more where it was relevant on mobile first designs of our, when we're creating websites, over just their desktop websites, which was typically normal industrial procedure in the past. So here's my first tip. If you haven't done so already, just go on to testmysite.withgoogle.com. It's probably the best, easiest DIY tool that's out there just to be able to test your mobile speed, and not just your mobile speed, but your usability as well. I'll just do a bunch of checks on your website. Just do it with your domain, okay? Don't do it with every single one of your pages. But put it in and see what it says and see what output comes out. If it's overly technical, be sure to reach out to an expert, a web developer, ourselves, if it's going to be in that kind of or your digital agency. Reach out to them and we'll be sure to be able to fix it for you if it is a technical matter. If you haven't done so already as well, make sure your website is on Google Search Console, because that way you'll be able to ultimately test every single one of your pages automatically, because Google Search Console will do that for you, and it'll feed back to you any mobile usability errors it comes across as it crawls your website intermittently. So as a quick test, just to make sure that your site is mobile ready, just go on to test my site with Google.com just to do that quick test. It's not a big leap to assume that 2020 onwards will be all about the user. So when we're talking about not just Google now, but when we're talking about our content and we're talking about our marketing, we should always be focusing on our audience. But when we are talking about Google, yes, we should be focusing on the user, because Google has now got to a point where it understands that what a user is wanting, what a user is looking for, because it has, like I say, an abundance of data to be able to play with. And ultimately, their aim is to make sure that their users that are using their platform are getting the best results. Don't forget, SEO is AEO. Jason Bernard's, if you haven't already listened to it, I suppose it's a little bit too marketing geeky, but there is a podcast called SEO is AEO by Jason Bernard. If you want to go and listen to it and check it out, it is really fascinating. I quite like it because they're quite short podcast episodes. You can just listen to them, but really, really interesting. And he's a big influential figure in the SEO world. But his whole thing is about making sure that you're providing the best results and content for your users. Things you should be checking on your website, okay? Is it fast? 3-second rule, okay? Like I alluded to before. If your website is loading in less than 3 seconds, they're gone. In more than 3 seconds, they're gone. Mobile usability, do that check. Check your Search Console as well. Make sure there's no errors coming out of Search Console. Some people just set up Search Console and then never look at it again. So make sure, if you have set it up in the past, go and get access to it and check it, because it's changed a lot, certainly in the past couple of years. Another thing is easy and simple navigation. This is a really key thing. Make sure that the navigation of your website is easy to understand. And also make sure you're checking it on a desktop and a mobile site, because they are very, very different in terms of the usability between both. So make sure it's easy and simple. If you've got far too many menu items, we work on clients on a day-to-day basis, and when we inherit sites from other places, we tend to find that there are a mass of different menu items here, there, and everywhere. So make sure that you are simplifying that. The best advice that I can give you is think of your main menu, okay, that main nav at the top, as silos of information, okay? And that they are each one of those silos is related to a particular topic. I think that's the best advice, because typically, okay, we have websites which is like homepage, about us page, all of our services all in one, and a contact us, and they're the silos, okay? But they're not really silos of information, and when Google's crawling that information, it's not really seeing a trend or a pattern in terms of how it sees that content. So my advice is to separate out those services that you provide, and have separate pages if it's worthwhile doing so for each silo of service, okay? And make sure you're providing content for each. Check your user journey. When was the last time you went onto your website and went through your website as a user, okay? So, and do that from a Google point of view. So you're a customer and you sell trainers, and you want a pair of Nike trainers. So type in Nike trainers into Google, or a particular type of trainer, doesn't matter, and look at the SERP. Now you'll probably, we'll come on to SERP in a second, but you'll probably notice that it looks a little bit different. So you might be looking at different tools. Also, you need to check what page for your website, what do you land on? Do you land on a category page? Do you land straight on a product page? Do you land on the home page? If you're landing on a home page, is that really the path of least resistance for your user? Because you're forcing your user to go, okay, I want to go to the Nike category, I need to go to the trainer page, blah, blah, blah. And that's a really long process to expect your user, your customer, to follow. Remember, as I keep sort of repeating, content writing is for people and not Google bots. So forget, and I keep coming past this a lot when I'm talking to clients, forget about Google when you're writing your content. Write your content from the perspective of, what are my customers asking, what are the questions that they have, and write answers for them as if you are conversing with them. Do you have any console errors? Again, if you don't already have access to your Google Search Console, go away and find find your Search Console and see if there's any Search Console errors. Also, don't forget, if you are on Google Chrome, which most people are on at the moment, load up your website, right click on your website, click on View Console, I think it is, and just see if there are any glaring errors, and they'll be right there in front of you, big red or yellow boxes. So go and check whether you've got any actual console errors, because they could be stopping Google from crawling your website effectively. Further development of the SERP, okay? So the SERP itself, which is basically marketers speak for search engine results page, is this page, okay? So I've typed in digital marketing here. I've done desktop here, but it could be for obviously on mobile as well, which will be a bit different. So make sure it's very, very different to how it used to look. And the point I'm making here is there's now this images section. There's now this sort of knowledge graph section on the right hand side, depending on the term that you look for. There's also a people will ask section as well. Down here in this section, you've got these people also ask, which is the questions that you're being asked. So you could perhaps look at writing content for these questions, and I'll come to a tool which will help you with that as well. If we go further down, we'll notice there are more elements, okay? So we can now see that there's this video elements interspersed with all the organic results as well. So these video elements here. So when people are searching for these, they're not being just presented with generic search results, okay? It's not just a standard results page. They're being presented with media-rich results. Ultimately as well, this is digital marketing. All I've put in is digital marketing, and you'll notice I've got a local pack here. It used to be a case where you'd only really see local packs these maps, which you see on some search results pages. You'd only really see them if you put in a local query, such as digital marketing Leeds, digital marketing Wigan, whatever. So you have these maps sometimes on generic searches as well. So make sure that for this case, make sure that your Google My Business profile, you should have one if you don't already, make sure that is up to date. Again, it's another one of these things that people have probably set up in the past and they've just forgotten about it. Google My Business has changed drastically over the past couple of years. So make sure you log back into it and make sure all of the information is up to date, and every single field that they allow you to put information in has information in. You can also now do posts on Google My Business. It's almost it's a quasi social media platform now, which appear on search engine results pages. So make sure you're utilizing them as well. Again, as we scroll further down, this is all page one. You'll notice I've not gone past page one. So this is page one, and we're on top stories. So we're talking about news articles now. So what I mean by this is, excuse me, we need to make sure that not just we're creating content on our website, but that our content is media rich. So how do we do some of these things? Well, Google, for these questions at the bottom here, Google will crawl your website and see if you have appropriately answered a question that's there. And if they have, they will take that content and put it straight onto the SERP. So there's an opportunity for you there, because you'll notice it goes, there's an advert here right at the top. You've got the first organic result here, and then you've got this. So there's a really good opportunity. A lot of people interact and use those people also ask features. So make sure that, because they need answers to their questions, and they'll click through to the actual answers as well. So make sure that you are answering the questions. FAQ pages are a really key part of that. Also, to get a little bit more technical, if you want to speak to your agency about this, you can also implement schema onto your pages. Schema are little bits of code which you can also almost bracket your content with, so that Google understands what we're talking about. For questions, you can bracket your question and say, hey, this is a question, and you can bracket your answer saying this is the answer to that question. So Google knows that it's a question and then an answer, and it might pull that information through to its SERP. Now, it's down to Google Gods to decide whether it pulls that information. It's not a guarantee just because you implement schema onto your site that it's going to do that, but it helps improve it. You don't have to use schema, by the way. If your content is good enough, it'll crawl it and understand it naturally. How do we get onto the video section? Okay, well, that's super easy. If you're creating video content, and if you're putting video content onto your website, so you are creating YouTube videos and you're putting them onto your YouTube channel, and then you are embedding those videos onto your content, then you're more likely to see your videos appear there. Also, they are naturally pulled through from YouTube search. So it's essentially just pulling through what you would get if you typed in digital marketing into YouTube search. But this is really key and crucial for when you're answering users' questions. So if you're talking about, how do I do this? I've got problems with my grass at the moment in the back lawn. Okay, it's really weedy. It's more weeds than it is grass. Okay, and it's really horrible. And if you went barefoot onto my grass, you'd want to scream and run away as quickly as possible. So I really wanted to find out how I could reduce the amount of weeds. Now I could put weed feed on it, or would I have to put something special on it? Do I have to test my soil? I needed answers to those questions. And what would be really ideal is if I had a YouTube video answering that question, showing me the examples of other people's lawns, or, so I could say, hey, that's exactly what I have. So clearly this answer is relatable to me and is relevant to me. So I know it's labor intensive, but ultimately you will reap the rewards back. I mentioned Google My Business when it comes to the local and news stories. Just again, updating your blog. You can even post and share your blog articles onto a platform called Google News. If you have the Google News app on your phone, which is a news platform, you can do that as well. You can submit your feed over to Google News. But just keep your blog up to date with the latest news of your business or your industry. Keep adding relevant content. Content that works isn't easy, okay? I want to really hammer this home. Death to keyword stuff content. If you're writing content and stuffing it with keywords, thinking, hey, this is going to rank really well for me, stop doing that right now. Stop it. You're only causing more damage to your site than you are actually going to reap the rewards from it or going to rank well from it. Google is far, far smarter than you are, okay? So just be sure that you are writing content that is going to be relevant. Don't write content for content's sake, okay? Don't just think, oh, I'm going to write about this because I can. Because if it's weak content and it's got no purpose, then it's not going to do anything. And ultimately, if you do a lot of that, you're going to start really watering down your website and its ability to be able to rank, because you're going to perhaps confuse Google. It's going to start to see multiple pages relevant to a certain keyword and go, do I rank this page or do I rank this page? Make sure that every single page on your website is as good as it can be, and the content is really solid and it's full of fact-rich, really valuable user valuable stuff. Users don't want keyword stuff content. Doesn't make sense when you read it anyway, and they don't want contents for content's sake. Valuable content in 20 to 21. Long form content is really, really good. An article which is 200 words is going to have less of an effect than an article 1,000 words. Ultimately, in some cases, an answer can only be answered in 200 words. So it is all about the quality as well. But generally speaking, long form content works the best. Quality over quantity, which we've mentioned already, not just writing post after post after post after post. Focus on value to the user. What value is your user getting out of that particular blog article, for example? Backlinkio is the example that you can see on your screen there, is a really good blog which is exclusive to long form content. You'll notice if you look at that article, it's actually quite sparse in the way of textual content. It's largely screenshots and screen grabs and other types of visual mediums, which Google does understand that, okay, and it will understand. And well, I'll come to this in a second. Make sure you're answering questions and mixed medium content. So this is where we're talking about including images, including videos, including audio as well. And if there is an opportunity for you to perhaps use a video that you've used before on this blog content, then do it and use it if it's relevant to the content in its context. Make it look great. That's not just for users, that's for Google as well. So do make it look great. If a user's never going to interact with content that doesn't look great, it's difficult to read, and it's harsh to read. People put a lot of effort into making sure their blogs on their websites are as accessible as possible. So make sure you're doing the same. Short paragraphs are great, okay? It's quite a neat trick, this. Make sure you're using short paragraphs, and you can see that on that Backlinkio example. Those paragraphs are never really any more than a sentence long. So make sure you're doing that. Don't try and keep them really long paragraphs. They are tricky to read. They're difficult to read. Users want to consume content as quickly as possible, and they want to get as much value out of it as quickly as possible as well. So short, sharp sentences and more visual mediums help that along. Engagement matters with content. This is a controversial point, but it's still a point that I believe truly. The SEO industry, I suppose, is split down the middle of people believing that things like CTR, which stands for click-through rate, so that's the amount of people clicking through onto your website from a search results page, time on page, comments on blog articles, and bounce rate, which is the amount of people that load up your site and immediately bounce off and not engaging with your content. These are all metrics which, one, Google will know because they have all of the data to their disposal, and two, they will use. Now, like I say, the SEO industry is split over whether Google uses these metrics or not. Google themselves say that they don't. I don't really truly believe it for a second. So for me personally, I do believe that they do use engagement metrics. So make sure, again, this point of not just writing for Google, but you're writing for the users, because the metrics that the users create, okay, for example, click-through rates, so making sure your meta descriptions on every single one of your content pages is right up there, is explaining the content on the page and is enticing for a user to click on. Time on page, so how long are they spending on that page? Are they engaging with it in terms of content, comments, or are they bouncing off it immediately? All those metrics will matter. Ultimately, answer the questions of your audience. Like I say, just always do that, and talk to your audience as well. Talk to your clients, talk to your customers, because they're your prospective customers, that you haven't met yet. So just make sure you're asking them what questions that they have, and when you're having conversations, be aware of that, and you'll start to get ideas for what content you could write. If you're struggling for content ideas, then you'll notice when I showed you the SERP page before, the search engine results page before, there was that Google also asked section. There is a tool which has basically scraped and harbored all of that content, so you can put in a certain keyword. Let's say it's trainers, because you are an e-commerce store that sells trainers. You can put in trainers, and it will look at all of the also asked questions that are within those SERPs, and they are great for being able to create piece of content. So for example, this is an SEO one. I've just put in SEO into alsoasked.com, this tool, and I could write a piece of content for, can you pay Google for SEO? People are clearly asking that question. So it'll be great for me to be able to write a blog article to answer whether people can pay, you can pay Google for SEO, or how much is SEO per month, etc., etc. These are clearly the questions that people are asking. So why not answer them through your content? Okay, so that's it. That is the digital marketing landscape as it is, and how you can help yourself and get ahead. Again, I'm going to reinforce the points that I say. Make sure that you are answering the questions that your customers are asking. Make sure the quality of your content, because now there is an absolute range of different content out there and it's all noise. Make sure you are finding yourself above that noise. So if you're going to be putting intensive labor into creating content, make sure it is a step above everybody else. If at least a step above your competitors. So my advice is go and check out what your competitors are doing and make sure it's a step above them. Okay, so how can Inner4 help you if you have found yourself thinking, hey, I need to start thinking about this and taking it to the next level? This is the best opportunity, the best time to start thinking about things like SEO, certainly, because there's a time now where we can start focusing on SEO, because it is a long-term strategy. You might need support right now in terms of your digital marketing, so Inner4 are able to provide you with paid advertisements in the form of Google advertisements, Google Ads, or social media advertisements as well. If you think that your business website is not good enough, your ecom website is not good enough, then we're able to build them for you. If you any of those that are on there, we also provide webinar support. So at this time, certainly, if you want to engage and interact with prospective customers and prospective clients, then the best way to do that is through something like this, a webinar. Okay, so we can provide you with the support to be able to do that. Forget all the technical stuff that you might be scared of or worried about. We'll deal with all that. All you need to focus on is the content of the webinar and making it as good as you possibly can be. Again, making sure you're answering the questions of your audience. So we'll be able to support you with all the technical webinar stuff, and you can focus on just presenting the webinar. Any email marketing services that you require, we can be able to do that. And obviously a podcasting service as well. Podcasting really, really hot right now. A really good way of being able to get personal with your audience and your prospective audience, develop a rapport, a relationship with an audience before you've even met them. So podcasting is certainly the way to go. Everyone's on demand in terms of their content at the moment. They want content when they want content, not when it's on. So podcasting is a really good way of doing that. And we all like to listen passively and actively at the moment. So a really hot topic at the moment is podcasting. We can provide you with the support, the advice, the ability to be able to record podcasts for you, support you in advising you how to make that podcast better, how to do it, all that kind of stuff. We're able to support you. If you do want to talk to us, you can get us inquiries at inner4.com, or info@inner4.com, in fact, is the email address. Just drop us a line on that email address and we'll be happy to help you. If you have any more questions, any more queries, anything like that. In fact, I'm just going to check if there have been any questions so far. Yes. So if you want to contact me or talk to me, you can do. You can go and search for Inner4 on LinkedIn, or you can search for myself personally, Digital Marketing Punk. If you want to connect with us on Twitter at Inner4Digital, Facebook at Inner4Digital, or you can check us out on our website, inner4.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I hope it was helpful and useful. I'm going to leave this video up for a while so people can go and watch it at their own time. Like I say, people are on demand now. They're not necessarily when it's on, so I'm going to leave this up and I hope I hope it helps you. If you do have any more questions even after this has gone live, don't forget you can comment on the video and we'll try and answer them for you. If anything comes out of that where we think, hey, we'll do another webinar, we will. If you've enjoyed it, let us know. We'll do more of these as these unprecedented times continue. I hope you've enjoyed it, and thank